Because he was scratched on the arm by an unknown creature, the man developed wolf-like hearing and owl-like vision. The sound of a spider crawling is completely inaudible to ordinary people, but to the man, it's as loud as thunder. In the pitch-black night, he could clearly see every strand of hair on his prey. Blake had been married to his wife for years, and they had a lovely daughter together. Because of his father's influence growing up, Blake would get extremely angry whenever his daughter acted recklessly and ignored his warnings.
I told you to get down! Why didn't you listen to me, damn it?
Ginger's sobbing calmed Blake down. After apologizing, he asked his daughter to show off her mind-reading ability and try to see what he was thinking by touching his forehead.
I love my little girl.
That's amazing. That's exactly what I was thinking. How do you do that every time?
In reality, Ginger had no such ability. It was just a little game Blake played to remind her that no matter what, he would always love her. However, this seemingly useless mind-reading ability would become the key to awakening her father. Blake's twisted expression and blood-red lips foreshadowed the terrifying changes to come. The joyful time between father and daughter was quickly interrupted. Blake's wife, Charlotte, returned with a letter, his father's will. His recently deceased father had left him the family's old house. Blake had always been afraid of his father and left him without hesitation after growing up. Not seeing him for over a decade filled Blake with regret, so he decided to move the family back to the old house to reconnect with the past. The house was deep in the woods, down a winding and confusing road. After so many years, Blake had completely forgotten the way. He tried to use his phone for navigation, only to find there was no signal at all. Ginger, sitting in the back seat and feeling bored, glanced around and was surprised to see someone standing at a nearby outpost.
Evening. Hey.
The man turned out to be Blake's old friend, but after so many years, they didn't recognize each other at first. Only when Blake mentioned he was there for the house his father had left did Derek suddenly realize who he was. Derek had a hunting rifle slung over his shoulder, as if something terrifying might appear from the forest at any moment. He took the passenger seat to lead the way, promising it wasn't far, but they drove from dawn to dusk without reaching the house. Blake turned to talk to Derek. When he looked forward again, he was startled. He swerved sharply to avoid a figure that suddenly appeared, sending the car off a cliff. The vehicle skidded and finally got stuck between a few trees. Despite Blake's warnings, Derek panicked and opened the door, falling several meters to the ground. Charlotte and her daughter climbed out the window and sat on the side of the vehicle, while Blake remained in the driver's seat, trying to find a way to escape. Suddenly, he heard howling in the distance. Looking through the side mirror, he was horrified to see something crouched on the other side of the vehicle. Blake slammed the passenger door shut with all his strength. In the next second, the creature attacked, smashing the window and clawing his arm. There was a ripping sound as Derek, lying on the ground, was dragged away and killed by the monster. Blake's blood pressure soared, adrenaline kicked in, and he quickly found a way to escape. Grabbing the side door handle, he joined his wife and daughter. As the only adult male, he jumped down from the vehicle and caught his daughter and wife as they came down after him. After comforting each other, the family ran toward the old house as fast as they could. The monster, having finished off Derek, quickly doubled back and began closing the distance. It slammed relentlessly against the front door. Blake held it shut with all his strength until, after about 30 seconds, the noise outside finally stopped. Still cautious, Blake checked every corner of the house to make sure there was no way for the creature to sneak in. Once he was sure it was safe, he went into the basement to turn on the power. Outside the house, the old generator finally roared to life after repeated attempts. Light flooded every room in the farmhouse, washing away the terrifying darkness with a warm, cozy glow. Ginger had been badly frightened by everything they'd been through. Blake stayed by her side, comforting her until she fell asleep. But still, uneasy about the safety of the house, he tried to get up quietly to check the surroundings, only to accidentally wake her. Blake apologized, telling her that he should have protected the family, but instead, they had gone through something horrifying. If this trauma left a lasting scar on Ginger's heart, he would never forgive himself. Then the two of them started playing their little mind-reading game again.
Hey, what am I thinking right now?
I love my little girl.
That's incredible. You must be able to read minds because...
In the basement, Blake found a car radio and kept adjusting it, trying to find a channel to call for help. Suddenly, a sharp, pungent smell caught his attention, but his wife couldn't smell anything at all. Following the scent, Blake discovered a hidden room in the basement, where his father had stored homemade jerky. As soon as he takes a bite, a sharp pain fills his mouth, followed by blood, and his teeth actually fall out. When Charlotte brought him gauze, she noticed the wound on his arm was now badly infected. From that moment on, Blake's body began to change, rapidly. After Charlotte gently bandaged Blake's wound, a loud noise echoed through the house as if someone were stomping hard on the ceiling. Blake followed the sound upstairs, worried the creature had broken into the house. He slowly peeked into the room, but all he saw was a spider crawling lightly along the wall. Yet to Blake, the sound was like someone beating a drum right beside his ear. Not only that, he also heard the creature pacing back and forth outside the door. He followed the footsteps to the back door, then suddenly, the sound stopped. Blake pressed his ear against the door to listen closely. Out of nowhere, a monstrous arm reached under the door and grabbed his leg with such force that Blake screamed out in pain. Charlotte rushed over, grabbed a hammer, and began smashing the creature's arm until it finally let go. The creature had nearly crushed Blake's bones. The pain was so intense that he collapsed against the wall, convulsing until he passed out. When he woke up again, it felt like he had entered a whole new world. In the pitch-dark room, he could clearly see a clock several meters away. From the basement came the voice of his wife. Though far away, he could hear her clearly, yet he couldn't understand what she was saying. Charlotte was trying to contact the outside world using the car radio.
Hello. Can everyone hear me? This is Charlotte. Werewolf. If someone can hear me, please respond.
Blake walked up to her, trying to speak, but the words coming out of his mouth made no sense to her. He had lost the ability to speak human language. Not only could he no longer understand or express himself, but his breathing now carried a low canine growl. Even worse, Blake had lost control of his bladder. Charlotte helped him onto the bed and handed him a piece of paper, asking him to write what he wanted to say. With stiff fingers, Blake shakily scrawled a single word: death. It meant that Blake could feel himself slowly dying. Charlotte tried to comfort him. "You're just sick. We'll fix this. I need you. Our daughter needs you. This family needs you."
What is happening?
Yet despite Charlotte's heartfelt expression of love, Blake couldn't understand a single word. Suddenly, the wound on his arm began to itch uncontrollably, like ants crawling all over it. He scratched and clawed at it, even tried biting it. When he finally calmed down, he realized Charlotte was staring at him in horror. Blake lowered his head and walked to the front door. Then he turned and looked at his wife, as if to say he had to leave, afraid he'd lose control again and hurt them. Charlotte understood his intention and didn't stop him. She turned her gaze to the window, and there, an old pickup truck caught her eye. She hurried back to the basement and found the truck's keys. After checking to make sure the creature wasn't around, they quietly snuck into the pickup, ready to make their escape. Charlotte tried several times to start the engine. Finally, it roared to life. Thinking they were finally safe, Charlotte turned on the wipers to clear the dusty windshield, only to see the creature had already climbed onto the hood. That's when they finally saw it clearly. It was a werewolf. Its hand was wedged against the windshield, buying the family precious seconds to flee. The closest place to run was a plastic greenhouse. Using a ladder, the three of them climbed up to the roof. They quickly pulled the ladder away, but the werewolf followed, crawling toward them. The thin plastic roof wouldn't hold much longer. Blake pointed toward the small house, signaling Charlotte to take their daughter and run, while he distracted the creature. Ginger kept looking back as she ran, but the pitch-black woods revealed nothing. Only the sounds of growling echoed in every direction. Shortly after the mother and daughter safely returned to the house, Blake stumbled back in as well. No one knew whether he had won or lost the fight. He simply collapsed onto the floor. Ginger slowly walked over and placed her hand on his forehead, starting their mind-reading game again. But this time, something miraculous happened. Blake understood what his daughter was saying. He suddenly sat up and vomited violently, scaring Charlotte into holding Ginger and backing away. Ginger, worried, cried out, "Daddy!" Though Blake had lost all sense of reason, the only thing he still remembered was his daughter. He thought Charlotte was trying to hurt her, so he leapt up, slammed her against the wall, and snarled, baring his teeth. The familiar scent on Charlotte finally brought him back to his senses. Blake lowered his head again, nearly losing control and hurting his wife. He made up his mind he had to leave the house. But as soon as he opened the door, the werewolf lunged at him. At first, the old werewolf had the upper hand, knocking Blake unconscious. It wasn't until Charlotte intervened, distracting the creature, that Blake had a chance to catch his breath. Seizing the moment, he bit the werewolf's throat and killed him. When he saw the tattoo on the werewolf's arm, Blake realized it was his father, Grady. Grady had lost his mind after turning into a werewolf and attacked his own family. Blake couldn't let the same thing happen to him. So, despite his injuries, he left the house, but he hadn't gone far when he collapsed, convulsing violently as his body underwent a rapid transformation. When he stood again, he had completely turned. No trace of his former self remained. The forest, once dark and silent, now appeared bright and heavenly to his new eyes. Blake saw the helpless wife and daughter inside the house as prey. He stood outside the door, roaring at them. Then he turned away and climbed into the house through the chimney. Terrified, Charlotte and Ginger ran out the front door. But outrunning Blake was impossible. They darted into the nearby barn, blocking the door with a heavy wooden latch. In the faint barn light, Charlotte spotted a bear trap on one of the shelves. She set the trap a short distance in front of them, then crouched beside Ginger. The two of them waited in silence. Meanwhile, Blake broke through the wooden door and crawled inside. The barn was pitch black, but to Blake, it was perfectly lit. He saw exactly where they were hiding. He fixed his gaze entirely on the mother and daughter, completely unaware of the bear trap at his feet. The moment he took a step forward, it snapped shut on him, and the two of them seized the chance to escape from the barn. Blake let out a furious howl and began tearing at his trapped leg. He bit through his own calf and finally freed himself. With only one leg left, he could only crawl across the ground, but even then, he continued to pursue them relentlessly. They sprinted back to the site of the crashed car. Charlotte saw Derek's rifle on the ground and immediately picked it up. Then she grabbed Ginger and climbed up to the old outpost to hide. But Blake had no intention of letting them go. He climbed up to the outpost as well. Just as Blake's head appeared, Charlotte pulled the trigger. Blake collapsed to the ground, convulsing uncontrollably. Ginger walked over to him, gently placed her hand on his forehead, and played their mind-reading game one last time. As Blake went completely still, mother and daughter left the forest together. But the legend of the werewolves in those woods would never fade.